One is eating an anti-inflammatory diet is just really important. Yeah, you can cheat every now and then. Again, with your audience probably, having a lot of physiological challenges, don't even cheat. Like stick hard to that either AIP. I think Dr. Gundry is even a little bit more aggressive than the AIP autoimmune protocol. So stick with that. I think that's really valuable. I take creatine every day. I take vitamin D, A, K, and E, like the basics. And then of course my product on a regular basis and exercise, right? And if you don't need to be, you may not need to be in a position or be in a good position to overstress, but put some stress. If it's a walk and it may be a little bit longer or a little bit faster, like you need to have motion. That blood flow adds value, allows your body to do. We were designed to move. We weren't designed to do what most of us do these days.
Hi, and welcome to the Lyme Bites podcast, where we shine a light on the misunderstood science of Lyme and other vector-borne diseases, as well as the truths that many still miss. I'm Dr. Mariah Hinchy, naturopathic physician and fellow of the Medical Academy of Pediatric Special Needs. I specialize in treating chronic Lyme disease as well as other complex inflammatory conditions. In this podcast, we break down what's working and what's not. We share the facts that most people miss, we challenge outdated thinking, and we give both patients and practitioners the tools to heal smarter. So let's get into it and change the way we heal Lyme. Hi, and welcome to another episode. Now, when we're talking about Lyme and other vector-borne diseases, we're not just talking about infection. We're talking about what those infections do to the body. As you all know, they drive persistent inflammation, generate excessive oxidative stress, and impair mitochondrial function at a cellular level. And when that happens, the body loses its ability to produce energy, regulate the immune system, and ultimately to heal. This episode's conversation is focused on targeting that deeper layer of dysfunction, cooling oxidative stress, and restoring mitochondrial function. And joining us for this conversation is Chris Burres, founder and chief scientist at MyVitalC. Additionally, Chris is an author, a podcast host, a longevity expert, and he's known for his work with a Nobel Prize recognized molecule designed to support cellular health and longevity. Welcome, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us.
Dr. Mariah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. I'm glad we got to meet in New York at IHS. And then if we ended up putting this together with the amazing Christy. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again for being here. So let's jump right in. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I want to start with discussing how inflammation, oxidative stress, and mitochondrial dysfunction are responsible for many of the core symptoms and negative effects of a Lyme infection.
Yeah, well, so I've actually put together a presentation, so I'll hop into that if that makes sense.
That would be great.
All right, so great. Lyme Recovery Blueprint is kind of like a rough title that we have here. I was always told, well, one, to have some sort of kind of design of how much of what we're going to do together. So a little disclaimer, of course, there'll be a little bit about me, the downstream effects of, say, Lyme disease or vector-borne diseases, the molecule that I've been working with since 1991, so a full 34 years, pretty amazing, how it works, and then kind of put all of this together. Anytime I'm talking, I'll be talking about this molecule, and ultimately this molecule is in a product that we have. The FDA has not evaluated our product. It is not intended to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent any disease. I like to say I'll probably share a couple anecdotes, and I just share, hey, just assume this won't happen for you. Dig into the research, and we'll probably have a link for you at the end of the presentation if you're interested. Just a little bit about me. As I mentioned, I've been working with this molecule, ESS60. You can see this beautiful molecule. There's actually a book called The Most Beautiful Molecule written about this molecule. We'll get into what that is here in a second. I did write the book, Live Longer and Better. Your journey to living longer and better has never been more achievable than today. The story of this molecule and kind of my journey into the longevity space. I have a podcast called Live Beyond the Norms. I'm excited. You're going to be on my podcast soon, so I'm excited about getting that recorded. And I am putting stuff out on Instagram and YouTube. I did do an Uncovering the Secrets of Longevity Summit. So I know how much work you're putting into the summit. So anybody listening, just understand Dr. Mariah has put a lot of effort into this. It is a lot of work, and it's great to kind of give that information back to people.
Thank
I was recently on Dave Asprey's podcast. So that was a super exciting experience. For those of you who don't know, he's considered the father of biohacking, the founder of Bulletproof Coffee and now Danger Coffee. So a pretty spectacular opportunity. Now, when we think about Lyme disease and vector-borne diseases, there are really kind of three kings. And you already touched on these. By the way, I put this presentation together and haven't run it by you. So if there's anything that you need to tweak, because you are more of the Lyme expert, I'm talking about how ESS60 might play a role. We've got chronic inflammation, right? So one of the things these vector-borne diseases are good at is being a master of disguise. Your immune system knows that they're there, but can't really resolve them in a lot of cases. Like that's where you come into play. And this ultimately ends up in an immune system that's reactive and creating what's called a cytokine storm. This is the thing in the middle of COVID. The cytokine storm was the thing that was actually causing the most damage as the body was trying to defend itself. So that's really kind of this persistent inflammation, joint inflammation, neuroinflammation, all of the things that you kind of get feedback on a regular basis. This kind of ties into this cytokine storm kind of also drives oxidative stress, this ongoing oxidative stress, and really starts depleting your glutathione. So glutathione is a master antioxidant. It's good for detoxing, immune support, cellular repair, ultimately mitochondrial function. You can see we'll be talking about that in a second. And so that is the oxidative stress that we see. And then in terms of mitochondrial dysfunction, the mitochondria is the most sensitive part of your cell. And when they break, the lights go out, right? Like the cells don't operate. If you can imagine, if you take the engine out of your car, there is no running car. It's just something that sits there and does nothing. The bacteria doesn't just damage, right, these through this inflammation, this oxidative stress, but it also takes some of the components that your mitochondria need to generate energy, like manganese and lipids. It has this hunger and is stealing nutrients for them. And we'll be talking about ESS60. We believe it's involved in membrane stabilization, free radical sponge. We actually know it can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles, and then really kind of lowering that cytokine storm. So I don't know if all this makes sense, all this checks. Anything to add to that?
No, it all makes perfect sense. And honestly, Chris, this is what I talk about all the time when I'm presenting to other medical professionals with all of the things that we have to be looking at and the actual changes in the terrain that need to be addressed and why we need to just stop focusing on killing all the time. Are you ready to revolutionize your approach to diagnosing and healing complex chronic inflammatory illnesses in both adults and children? The Lyme Bites Symposium is your gateway to cutting-edge education, groundbreaking research, and innovative therapeutic solutions. Join us at Lyme Bites Symposium at the Fort Lauderdale Marriott, Pompano Beach Resort and Spa. Lyme Bites is the premier functional medicine conference on complex chronic infection-driven inflammatory illnesses. This year's meeting is jam-packed with leading industry experts discussing long COVID, mycotoxin illness, pandas, as well as Lyme and other vector-borne diseases. This conference will arm you with the knowledge, clinical pearls, and practical solutions that you can implement immediately into your practice Monday morning that will literally change your patients' lives and get them on their path to true healing. So join us at Pompano Beach or virtually from anywhere. Register now at lymebites.com. That's LYMEBYTES.com.
It's got to be support. Because there are so many things that are going wrong. So this, of course, begs the question, what is this ESS60 molecule? Yes. Again, I've been working with it since 1991. The molecule was discovered in 1985 at Rice University here in Houston. That's where our lab is based. And the three scientists who discovered the molecule, Dr. Smalley, Dr. Curl, and Dr. Croto, went on to win the Nobel Prize for the discovery in 1996. And you'll notice here that my lab actually started producing it in 1991, a full 5 years before the Nobel Prize was awarded. I am not a very braggadocious person, so this is the biggest braggart you're going to hear from me. it is not unreasonable to suggest that because we were delivering commercial quantities of this carbon nanomaterial, ESS60, to research institutions around the world, scientists actually had the material, could actually run studies and tests and experiments, and could understand how valuable the material was. And that led to them getting the Nobel Prize. So that's as kind of braggadocious as I'll get. Now, this molecule is amazing. The way I describe it is it performs as well or better than the current best material in almost every application. It makes better inks, better batteries, better tires, better photocells. This is often where people get nervous. We're talking
It's like,
about
wait a second, did I just like switch
nobody,
interviews?
right? Nobody who's reached out to you and is struggling with Lyme or some other vector-borne bacteria is like, hey, I wonder what part of my car battery I should be taking on a daily basis for my health, right? So, and I'll be honest, the story gets a little worse first. So this shape right here, front and center, is the same shape as benzene. It's not the same chemical formula, but the same shape. And in fact, you can see it occurs a lot of times in this photo. That's 7 times. It actually occurs 20 times in this full cage, the soccer ball-like cage. And benzene is ubiquitous in our society and necessary for modern society. And if you have any doubts, just kind of glance around you and think of anything that's plastic or notice anything that's plastic, gone, because the benzene ring is the foundational molecule. Many medications have the benzene ring as a foundational molecule, including aspirin. So we don't have modern society without it. It's everywhere. And that's great, except when benzene is on its own, it's known to be toxic and known to be carcinogenic. So this shape occurs 20 times on the exterior of this ESS60 molecule. They thought it would be toxic, and they put it in a toxicity study. This is, I promise, that's the worst. Now the story starts getting a lot better. It actually starts getting a whole lot better. 3 pieces came out of this toxicity study. First off, the test subjects that they gave it to, in this case, Wistar rats, lived 90% longer than the control group.
Wow.
So the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, peer-reviewed published research, is because of this ESS60 molecule dissolved in olive oil. And I'm very proud to share my lab provided the material, and my lab is mentioned in that original study.
That's amazing. Let me interrupt you. I have one question.
Yeah.
Whatever made someone think, here's something that appears almost to be a toxin, right? Like benzene is a very significant carcinogenic toxin. What would ever make you think to give it to an animal, like to a mammal, to a rat, to anything living?
So because it's great in inks, batteries, tires, and photocells, right? They thought we as a man might be working with it on a regular basis. I would love it, kind of a nickname of this is a buckyball. It would be very cool to have a Bucky battery. I don't know, that just sounds really cool. So they thought man would be working with it on a regular basis. And if you think you're going to be working with it on a regular basis and you suspect that it might be toxic, you need to understand, is it toxic? So remember, this study was a toxicity study.
Okay, I missed. I missed. Okay.
They were convinced these rats were going to die, right? Like, and then they were going to write a report. Actually, this is a great time to interject. I love to give credit to these researchers because, let me skip ahead to this chart. So we'll do this because this is a great point to interject. 3 groups of rats, right? One group was given water, a control group. Another group was given olive oil, a semi-control group. And then another group given the ESS60 molecule with olive oil. And that's the group that lived out 90% longer. Remember, this is supposed to be a toxicity study, right? So if anything is ever true, especially about a toxicity study, when all of your water control rats are dead, and all of your quote unquote toxic rats are alive, the molecule is not toxic, right? There's 0 doubts at that point. So instead of ending the test here right at about the 32-month mark, that's an average, so there's a little bell curve around it. They kept doing the animal husbandry for about 2.5 more years to keep these rats alive, right? They were like, when are they going to die? In reality, they were down to 2 more rats. One of them died. They euthanized the last one so they could finally publish their results, right? So it's pretty fantastic. Another thing I like to point out, right? Olive oil is kind of all the rage. You've got Dr. Stephen Gundry talking about olive oil. You got Brian Johnson selling an olive oil. In fact, I love what Dr. Gundry says. He says the purpose of food is to get more olive oil into your mouth, right? Isn't that great? So here's an 18% extension of life in Wistar rats because of olive oil. I would agree. The purpose of food is to get more olive oil into your mouth. Now, this is already a fantastic result. The other piece that's really pretty amazing is a typical Wistar rat lives out to 32 months, right? And has a known amount of tumor mass in its body. And here you can see in this graph, the tumor mass is growing as time goes on. Even though the ESS60 rats lived out to 62 months, none of them had any tumors, right? So if you were to project this graph, like there should have been a mass of tumors in these rats, and there was zero mass. None of them had any tumors. Now, I've told that story, and people have said, oh, cure for cancer. And my immediate response is no. And then I follow that with another no. There's a big difference between dealing with a cancer that has metastasized and potentially being, like this suggests, a cancer preventative. We know things as simple as good exercise, good nutrition, good sleep are cancer preventatives. That this piece of the study just throws this ESS60 molecule into that arena. I will add, and it is a Petri dish study that I'm going to talk about. Petri dish studies are the lowest possible study, right? But it is relevant, I think. So in a Petri dish, they have cancer cells and healthy cells, and they introduce an anti-cancer agent, which is a poison, right? You're hoping to poison the cancer cells before the healthy cells. In the presence of the ESS60 molecule, there's increased efficacy against the cancer cells and protective effect for the healthy cells. So what that means is in the presence of ESS60, more cancer cells die, less healthy cells die. And we have a kind of a rough idea of why that might be going on, and it's related to the mitochondria and what we believe the ESS60 molecule is doing in the mitochondria. So pretty profound results so far. I want to talk a little bit about this kind of cool transition. So that study came out in 2012. Mid 2013, we start getting phone calls from this crazy, wacky group of people called biohackers. And I can say that affectionately now because I am a biohacker. And they were like, hey, how much of this should I take? And my business partner and I were, conservative carbon nanomaterial scientists. And what we heard is, Chris, how much of that stuff that you sell to research institutions around the world to put into inks, batteries, tires, and photocells, how much of that stuff should we take? And we thought the answer was zero. We actually added not for human consumption to our labeling in mid 2013. So think about that. From 1991 all the way to mid 2013, we don't have to have not for human consumption on the labeling. Now we add it. Now, this created a very unique situation where we were getting 2 to 3 phone calls a week that sounded kind of like this. Hey, Chris, my knee pain is gone. And I'm like, Joe, you mean the knee pain of your rat? Because it literally says not for human consumption on the labeling. And Joe was like, yeah, hey, if my rat weighs 275 pounds and does HIIT training on Wednesdays and Fridays, should my rat take more on Wednesdays and Fridays? So we knew what was going on. And the reason we allowed it is because it was clear in the literature that this material is safe, including this very particular study, toxicity study, quote unquote, where the rats live 90% longer than the control group. Quarter after quarter, my business partner and I are getting together. Do we want to get into the supplement industry? I think generously describe the supplement industry as challenged, right? Like you're in the space, so challenged might be generous. And so quarter after quarter, we're like, we don't want to get into this space. And in fact, it wasn't until 2017, and I'll talk about this kind of YouTuber that changed everything. But in that interim period, I found a peer-reviewed published research paper that showed that 50% of the supplements that were on the market, this research group purchased, didn't have in them what they said they had in them, right? That challenged, again, as being generous. So we're used to delivering commercial quantities of carbon nanomaterials to research institutions around the world, highest level, right? They have the equipment to test it. They know we shipped, how to test what we shipped them and confirm that what we promised is what we shipped. And so we just kept saying no quarter after quarter. And then finally in 2017, a guy with a big YouTube following, he was actually in the Bitcoin space, but he started talking about all the benefits he was getting, taking it on a daily basis. And our phone went from those 2 to 3 calls a week to 10 calls a day.
Wow.
So now we look back at that quarterly meeting and we look back at that research paper where 50% of the supplements didn't have in them what they said they had in them. We knew that was going to happen in this space. we're the oldest and longest manufacturer of this molecule on the planet. We have the lab. We've been delivering lab quality materials. So we decided, well, we asked ourselves two questions before we decided to get into the industry. The first one is a moral question. Are we comfortable selling it? I take it. My wife takes it. Everybody on our team here takes it. By the way, not a requirement. Like you don't clock in and take your shot of My Vital C. And
It
then next is
enhances your work production, right?
it actually does. I'm about to share a testimonial video from a Dr. Young where he says they believe the product should just be in their break room for their employees. Like that's how important it is to them. So yes, I'm comfortable selling it. And then the next is the legal, the FDA and the FTC. You got to cross the T's, you got to dot the I's. And you'll hear me crossing and dotting I's throughout this presentation because we have to be really careful. So then we did bring this to market. Now, I do have this presentation. Dr. Lane Young at our booth at A4M, which is in Las Vegas. A4M stands for the American Academy of Anti-Aging. Unfortunately, I can't set it up so that you can hear it, but here's what he said. And obviously, I've listened to this video a number of times. In fact, he told me this, and then I was like, Dr. Young, I have to record this video. And he said, Chris, I don't care if you're male, female, pre-surgery, post-surgery, cardiovascular disease, or otherwise healthy. Your product is reducing elevated hsCRP numbers. That stands for high sensitivity C-reactive protein. I'm sure you deal with that regularly. I'll talk a little bit more about it. He, not in this video, subsequent conversations, said from 9, an hsCRP of 9 down to 0.9, which is in normal ranges, in 4 to 8 weeks. He also says that they're seeing improvements between 20 and 60% in HRV, so heart rate variability, and sleep. All of these incredibly important. And as I mentioned already, he said, we believe it should just be something that we keep in the break room for employees. Now, hsCRP, often associated with cardiovascular disease. I had a conversation with an oncologist after kind of this happened. And he shared that if you have an hsCRP of 9, we assume you have cancer until we prove otherwise. I don't know, is that a marker that you track and is elevated?
Are you suffering from Lyme disease or another complex chronic illness and aren't sure who to trust when it comes to herbal supplements? Hi, I'm Dr. Mariah Hinchy, founder of Lyme Botanicals. As a naturopathic physician specializing in complex chronic infection-driven illnesses like Lyme disease, I needed herbal medicine I could truly trust. That's why I formulated Lyme Botanicals, where our herbal tinctures are handcrafted in small batches right here in Connecticut. We use the whole herb, never isolates, to preserve the full spectrum of medicinal compounds. Every single step from sourcing to extraction is done with precision to ensure maximum purity, potency, and consistency. These are the same herbal formulas I use to heal myself and have used for years to help my patients and family members heal too. And now I'm making them available to practitioners and patients everywhere. Lyme Botanicals, herbal medicine you can trust from a doctor who lives this work. Learn more at Lyme Botanicals. That's LYMECORE.com. Yeah, absolutely. And we see it elevated in a lot of patients that have vector-borne disease because of the significant inflammatory nature of these diseases. And actually, on if you get it done somewhere like Quest, you'll see under the description of what the numbers mean. If it's greater than 10, it actually says that this number could suggest a chronic infection or an active infection, I should say.
Yeah. So in fact, I'll talk a little bit about this later, but we're working on doing a clinical trial on hsCRP. Not only do we have Dr. Young's testimonial, there is in fact peer-reviewed published research showing reductions in hsCRP in beagles, right? So a pretty large mammal, compared to a rat. So
yeah,
we're excited to be going down that path. I will share kind of one other testimonial. Gwen is our largest distributor in Houston. She originally purchased the product for her dog with no intention of taking it. Noticed such a profound difference in her dog that she decided to start taking it. And I like to point out, this is new. I know this probably the second time you're, Dr. Mariah, hearing about this. you should have like, oh, I wonder what part of this is placebo, because the reality is placebo affects everything. It affects the medications that your doctor prescribes. Do you believe in them? That makes a difference. The supplements, your workout routines, your whatever daily routine, all of it matters. And we're subject to the principle, but dogs aren't, right? Ironically, they're not smart enough to have this placebo of, I got my dropper, so I should have more energy today and I should be, feisty or whatever. They just act the way they feel. So Gwen starts taking the product, and I'm going to share this. This is probably the worst testimonial about a supplement you're ever going to hear. But she said, as I did a video with her, and she shared that at the 3-month mark, she didn't really notice anything until she stopped and kind of took stock of her life. And she's like, well, I'm working later. I'm waking up earlier. I was never a morning person. And here's the worst testimonial about a supplement ever. I cleaned my garage. So we don't use that in any marketing literature, but it means something. Like cleaning your garage is potentially hot and sweaty, or you're in Connecticut right now, cold and miserable. Like, it is a big deal. And so she shared that. One last, I'll blow through this one. Kyle Zagrodsky, he's a owner of OsteoStrong, which is a global franchise that helps women with osteopenia and osteoporosis, so build bone density. His son brought home a dog. You can kind of see here, they took it to the vet. It was showing the signs of retention on the surface of its brain. Its balance was off. It was dizzy. It could barely eat. 3 days after he got the dog, he got our product. He was giving the dog 2 to 3 doses per day. And at the time that he wrote this, it was 80% better. Really, the vet was like, it seems like a miracle. The other quote that I like, kind of similar to Dr. Young's, we just believe we should provide it to our employees. Kyle shared that he will never not take our product, right? So
Wow.
he's in the health space. So I think that is important. Now, how might this be working? I don't know if I've mentioned, but our most consistent testimonial is people take the product in the morning, report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night. We all know that sleep is good for your mental, physical, and emotional well-being. So that was, as I'm stepping into this role, this new role of being the chief scientist of a health and wellness company, that was the first place I landed. The next, I was trying to figure out, why might these rats have lived longer? So let's look at the medical community and let's look at what they think about aging. And they don't all agree, but they tend to think of it as an oxidation and an inflammation process. Oxidation and inflammation, two of the 3 key things that we're seeing as outcomes of these vector-borne diseases. So in terms of antioxidant, there's an ad hoc study showing our product to be 172 times more powerful than vitamin C. And there's peer-reviewed published research showing it to be 125 times more powerful than vitamin C. So I'm in Texas. We put a big old check mark on antioxidant. In terms of inflammation, here's some of the crossing the T's and dotting the I's. We have to be really careful when we talk about inflammation, because the FDA equates conversations of inflammation with the diseases of inflammation, which are also the diseases of aging. So like arthritis, Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, cancer. So if I come here and say we address inflammation, the FDA hears me claiming we cure cancer, we cure cardiovascular disease. We are not claiming that. There is so much research that would need to go into that, and frankly, really expensive research, in order for us to claim that. The FDA does allow us to say that we address exercise-induced inflammation. So we've all had a tough workout, or maybe just walked farther than normal and woken up that next day and felt that sense of inflammation in our body. The FDA allows us to say that we address that type of inflammation. And then we finally landed, and this is going to pull all things together, on the BOSS theory. So buffering oxidative stress system. Let me change slides here. Buffering oxidative stress system. Here's what drives it. We know from peer-reviewed published research that this ESS60 molecule gets into the mitochondria. We also know from way back in the 90s that it can hold up to 6 negatively charged particles on the exterior of this cage. And what that looks like, right? So I know you know this. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of every cell. There's between 50 and 5,000 mitochondria in every cell in our body, except for our blood cells, which have 0, and our brain and neurons, which have 2 million. It's fascinating how much energy our nervous system uses relative to our other systems. Now, like any energy source, powerhouse of every cell, like any energy source, there is a negative byproduct. You think about a car going down the road, it's got exhaust. You think about a power plant, it's got a smokestack. In the case of mitochondria, it's reactive oxygen species. Now, the way I picture these, they're like little bumper cars. And if they're left to their own devices, they're running around the body, and everything they smack into, they cause oxidative stress, oxidative damage, ultimately inflammation, right? Which sounds horrible, and it is. And like so many biological systems, a mitochondria has a way to manage this, and that is with the antioxidants, glutathione and melatonin, right? These are key antioxidants inside the mitochondria. I like to pause here because melatonin is the sleep hormone. Remember, one of our most consistent testimonials is about involves sleep. There's some nice parallels here. So in a healthy mitochondria that's not overproducing, you can see that these reactive oxygen species, there's this beautiful, tranquil blue color because they're bonded with glutathione or melatonin. So they can't run around and do any damage. But what happens when you stress a mitochondria? We don't need to be, first off, how do you stress a mitochondria? We don't have to belabor it with your audience, right? What they're dealing with is stressing their mitochondria. But even if you're not dealing with a vector-borne disease, it's smoking, drinking, pollution, it's EMF exposure, it's stressful content. Like you have, if you live in modern society, you have stress mitochondria. And at that point, the mitochondria starts producing more reactive oxygen species than can be managed internally. So you see here that there's some that are this blue color that are being managed by the glutathione and melatonin, but it's just producing more than can be managed. And now they have the opportunity to run around and cause oxidative stress, oxidative damage. And that's where the ESS60 molecule comes in. We know from peer-reviewed published research it's in there. And then we believe it's holding on to up to 6 of these negatively charged particles, so they can't run around on their own and do damage. And then when that mitochondria replenishes the glutathione, replenishes the melatonin, then it can manage those reactive oxygen species appropriately. And that's why we say that this molecule is the boss, buffering oxidative stress system. And the summary is, we believe we're reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria. And if you reduce the negative impact of stressed mitochondria, you should have systemic benefits, and you should have what we have, which are head-to-toe testimonials. I've been talking a lot. I have a fun analogy of this to maybe break it down, but it would not surprise me if you had any questions or something to interject here.
No, I really don't. It makes perfect sense. I think maybe using your analogy might be helpful for our listeners to understand it a little bit better.
So I have to ask you this. I think that all biological analogies should start with Mardi Gras. What do you think?
I'll go with it.
A lot of biology happens at Mardi Gras. So
Right?
that's the reality. So it's the end of Mardi Gras, and you have these drunk reactive oxygen species running around on Bourbon Street, right? Causing this rust, right? Spray painting the walls, smashing windows. And you have the New Orleans Police Department, the glutathione and the melatonin coming onto Bourbon Street, handcuffing themselves to those reactive oxygen species and getting them off of Bourbon Street. But what does the New Orleans Police Department do when they get overwhelmed? They take those reactive oxygen species and they put them in a paddy wagon. They attach them to the exterior of the ESS60 molecule so they can't run around and do any damage. And then when the New Orleans Police Department replenishes the glutathione, replenishes the melatonin, then they can handcuff themselves to those reactive oxygen species and get them off of Bourbon Street. And again, that's why we say the ESS60 molecule is the boss, a buffering oxidative stress system.
It's a great analogy.
It's fun, right? And it's fun.
Yes.
Yay.
And it is fun.
So I do have a couple examples that are kind of in the realm of inflammation, really related to my biological age. So there's a lot of biological age tests. I took one called ESR, which stands for erythrocyte sedimentation rate. It is the rate at which, so basically you take a drop of blood into a capillary tube, you hold it vertically, so gravity acts on it. And the rate that the plasma separates from the blood cells is an indication of your inflammatory status, right? Your overall inflammatory status. When I took this study, it had me at 20 plus years younger than my chronological age. I'm happy about that, right? The next one is glycanage. You may have heard this. It's based on glycans. Glycans are sugar molecules, and they attach to molecules in your body a very specific way, and they map as you age in a very specific direction. And this is really an indication of inflammation also. When I took this test, I was 34 years younger biologically than I was chronologically. At the time I was 21, I kind of joke like, if you're younger biologically than 21, can you still drink? Like,
Right.
I don't know. I mean, we shouldn't be drinking, but it's nice to have the opportunity, right? And then this last test, I got to be honest, I'm not still not happy with the numbers, but I am happy with the direction. So this is DNAge. It's looking at methylation. And when I first took this test, it had me, I was 51, it had me at 59. So I was very like not happy about this, right? I'm doing lots of stuff. I'm taking my product, but I took the test 3 years later. So when I was 54, it had me at 58. So in the course of 3 chronological years, I reverted 1 biological year. And so a pretty fantastic result. I want to talk a little bit about some of the testing that we're doing. Of course, we provided the material in that original Bati study where the rats lived 90% longer than the control group. It's called the Bati study because the grad student who did all the work was Bati, but the research professor was Dr. Fatih Musa. We've published with him in 2024, 2025. We will be publishing with him in 2026. And I do want to point out, we're a very weird supplement company. Most supplement companies don't do research, and even fewer publish that research. We're continuing to do that stuff, including what's about to happen. A sleep study, we did do an ad hoc sleep study. I've got a graph of that here. This was a crossover study. So we were asking, the survey questions were things like rate your sleep, how easy was it to fall asleep, how restless was your sleep. We asked those questions for 10 days prior to them taking the product, 10 days while they were on the product, 10 days back off the product, and then 10 days back on the product. You can see, and this is the aggregate of the data, that everybody reported improvements in sleep when they were on the product. Not only is that true of the aggregate of the data, it's actually true on the individual basis. Everyone reported improvements in sleep when they were on the product, which is, again, is not surprising given our most consistent testimonial: take it in the morning, mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night. So we're actually going to do clinical trials. We should start these 4 clinical trials before the end of the year. One of them is on, so it's on sleep, it's on headaches, frequent headaches. And the reason is because we have just testimonials, including my own. I won't get into it, but I did used to track my migraines back to 2014. When I started taking this, I was getting 4 to 5 a year. When I started taking this product, I went 18 months without a single migraine.
Wow.
I joined our sleep study, so I went off the product, and that's when I got my first migraine in over 18 months.
Wow.
So
I
we're
was
doing it.
actually going to ask you, so what year did you start taking this product? And you had said it was 2014.
Well, no, that's when I started my migraine. Like, I was getting migraines and I'm trying to figure out what caused them. I really
Gotcha.
started taking this earnestly in 2018. So that's when I started. And so we're doing that study. And in fact, this is kind of a screenshot of the study. Then we're doing an HSCRP study, so high sensitivity C-reactive protein, a more rigorous study, right? So our study, this one is kind of an ad hoc study with a small cohort. We're working to do a much bigger one. And then we do have a cosmetic product. So, again, if you're improving mitochondria, everything should be improving. So we are going to start a wrinkle and age spot study moving forward.
That's great.
And then to kind of remember, we saw this in the beginning. I kind of wanted to go in and tie these things together. So chronic inflammation, that's that false alarm. We do believe that ESS60 has the ability to dampen that down. If you think about what it's doing, I mean, really, this false alarm is probably all driven by the mitochondria and mitochondrial dysfunction. You're probably talking about that on a regular basis. And again, we have to be careful about talking about chronic inflammation. So we are not making any claims about chronic inflammation. Oxidative stress, we talked about what it's doing actually in the mitochondria, which is incredibly powerful. You want to suppress that oxidative stress, prevent those reactive oxygen species from running around like little bumper cars and causing and wreaking all sorts of havoc. And then in the mitochondria, the advantage that we saw in the boss theory is dampening that reactive oxygen species. And again, I like to describe it as reducing the negative impact of stressed mitochondria. And that's the overall benefit. Now, one last slide before I share, if anybody wants to connect. People ask, what does it look like to take the product? We think of it in terms of a 3-month timeline, and it has parallels with our most consistent testimonial, take the product in the morning, report mental focus and energy during the day, and then better sleep that night. So month one, we're looking at focus and energy. The testimonial that I lean on here, or I will share here, is we got some product to an influencer. She took it, she recorded her video that night, and she pointed out that she didn't finish her cup of coffee. Now, I don't know if you're a coffee drinker, but if you are a coffee drinker, not finishing it is a big deal. Noticing that you didn't finish it is a potentially even a bigger deal. And I will share, I used to be a 2 to 3 cup of coffee per day person. I'm now more like a one, maybe even a half. It's about the ritual for me, right? I come to work, I make my cup of coffee. By the way, I'm a little bit apprehensive of even dropping the habit because that's actually when I take my product. When I didn't have it as part of my routine, I could get to 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I could be, oh, do I need a nap? Do I need another cup of coffee? And I could look back and I hadn't taken the product that morning. So I'm down to we'll say half a cup of coffee. There are some potential weight loss benefits. It's well documented that if you reduce saturated fats, if you replace saturated fats with an oil like olive oil, then there are weight loss benefits. The next is month 2, and we lean on it for deeper sleep. The reality is, I think the improvements in sleep are happening sooner, but everybody gets a little bit more or less sleep every night, right? Nobody's like Brian Johnson getting the exact same amount of sleep every single night. And so it can be hard to pinpoint, oh, I started taking my Vital C. Now I notice that I'm getting that better sleep. And what I lean on here is my business coach. He shares that for 50 years, he needed an alarm clock to wake up. When he started taking the product, he wakes up before the alarm clock. I like to point out, he's a business coach, right? So he's got late night mixers, late night dinners. None of that matters unless he goes without the product for about 10 days. And then he starts to need the alarm clock again to wake up. So that's sleep. And then finally on month 3, we're talking about reducing the negative impact of stress mitochondria, which should have systemic benefits. And frankly, we have a lot of testimonials, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this, that we just can't share. The FDA wants us to do a lot more research, and I've kind of mentioned expensive research in order to be able to share those testimonials. I will share, my father-in-law was walking with a cane at about the 3-month mark. He started walking without the cane and therefore started walking more, right?
Right.
No brainer here. And of course, when you're walking more, you're losing weight. So it had this kind of systemic benefit. And that's the testimonial that I can share kind of on month 3.
That's great.
And and I don't know if you have any questions or anything.
Well, I was just going to say, and I mean, if I remember what you told me in New York when we met, is that this is really, you're taking this just once a day, right? It's not like we're taking multiple doses all day long. It's like that dose that you're taking in the morning is increasing energy, focus, and enhancing sleep, but you've only taken that once a day dose.
It's really profound to take something in the morning and positively impact sleep at night. I mean, that's one of the biggest kind of pieces of evidence that the boss theory is right? Because the boss theory is working at the level of mitochondria. I mean, think about 2 million mitochondria in every brain cell, every neuron, right? Well, you should have an outsized impact. And I'm sharing our most consistent testimonial are all brain related. Focus and energy, and then better sleep that night. So yeah, it's absolutely profound that it has the impact on sleep from something that you take in the morning. I will also point out, remember in the testimonial from Kyle, where he was giving, because the dog was in such bad shape, he was giving 3 servings to the dog. And I'll share this. So we've got a 2-time US ultra running champion who loves our product. And my conversations with him were pretty awesome. The first one was, hey, Chris, I was taking 1 serving of your product. I didn't really notice anything. And then I joke, like all good biohackers, he tripled the servings. By the way, there are some things you should definitely not triple. So like, be careful, but ours is okay. And he said, when he tripled the serving, he was blown away. He said, wow, I think your product could be the difference between somebody having running as a hobby and running as a career. He went on to say, I don't believe that your product speeds up exercise recovery. I believe it prevents damage in the first place. And the reason he said it was because on the last 5 miles of a 50-mile run, which is a phrase you will probably never hear again anywhere, but on the last 5 miles of a 50-mile run, where strength and stability used to be a problem, they're no longer a problem. And if you think about this ESS60 molecule, holding on to the oxidative stress that this, ultra runner is clearly doing to his body, and then it giving the body the time, the space, the bandwidth to do what it's supposed to do. That makes perfect sense. So yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, is there any sort of like dose dependent, study that you've done where you really didn't see any more benefit doing a higher dose?
That's a great question. We do have people who will take our recommended serving is 1 teaspoon or 5 mils in the morning. There are people who take a tablespoon. As an example, Anthony Kunkel, who's a 2-time U.S. ultra running champion, he actually starts. We have an MCT product, and he starts in the MCT because there's some weight loss benefits for MCT or hunger management, and he's running for a long time, 50 miles. So he needs every ounce of anything that he can not have on his body. Like that's a goal. And so we'll start with that. But our MCT has a lower concentration of the ESS60 molecule. So as he's getting closer to competition, he ramps up into the olive oil and he literally just like drinks it out of the bottle. Like the target may be 3 servings, but it's more. A more accurate answer. We haven't done dose specific, right? We're working on really I'm working on how do I get this into more people's hands because of the testimonials that we get on a regular basis. And from there, we're doing this research. So this research will allow me to talk about things that really are impactful to people. If you start thinking about frequent headaches, you start thinking about HSCRP, actual sleep, like so a clinical quality trial on sleep, and of course, wrinkle and age spot. When we can more concretely crossing the T's and dotting the I's, talk about those, then we can start investing in kind of the next level of research, which I'd be very interested. What is the dose dependence on it?
Good to hear all of the research that you're doing. And I mean, everything that we're talking about applies so much to our complex chronic illness audience.
Mm, yeah. So I have made a special link for your complex illness audience. So it's myvitalc.com/healing Lyme. So they can go there. A couple things I'll share, like the plan of action when you go there. So I did a longevity summit. I think I briefly mentioned it at the beginning. I got to interview like Dave Asprey, Ben Greenfield, Dr. Stephen Gundry, many, many others. And I asked all of them, like, what are 2 to 3 habits or shortcuts that you would share for longevity? And I compiled those down into 18 biohacking tips. So you can go to that link and you can get those 18 biohacking tips for free. Give you the email and your name, and we'll get those biohacking tips to you. I have a special offer for your audience, as much as a 40% discount for your audience. I really want people to try this. If they scroll down on that page, they'll see an offer for 2, 3, or 6 bottles. And the 6, the concept, that's where the biggest discount is, a 40% discount. The concept is, hey, it's a 3-month kind of trial, right? That's what I mapped out. Maybe keep 3 bottles for yourself, give 3 bottles to somebody who might need them, or you might be selfish like I would and just keep all 6 for yourself. So on each of these, there is an additional discount on subscription. Go ahead and take, even if you just want to order one batch or whatever, take advantage of that subscription. Our customer service team has 1,000 5-star reviews on Google. They are not trained to talk you out of canceling your subscription. They're trained to help you, and they do an amazing job. It just seems most people don't cancel their subscription. There is a coupon code on that page. I'm not going to give it to you here. You got to go to that page to get the coupon code for $30 off. That $30 off does apply to just those deals on that page. I'm going to mention one other thing. We didn't talk much about it. So this is our 4-ounce bottle. This is our Reduo, what's called our Reduo set. We actually get more amazing testimonials about this. It's a cosmetic. Basically, in the taller bottle is a peptide we call UTH29, which stands for Youth 29. Kind of cool. And then my director of research said, hey, I found this peptide. It's got 30 years of skin and hair improvement. I looked at it. I was like, we need to have this product with ours. But our ESS60 molecule is oil soluble. The peptide is water soluble. We could have shoved these together with an emulsifier. I don't like how an emulsifier sounds. There are no health benefits to emulsifiers, so we wanted as few as those as possible. So basically, it's separate. You do 1 squirt of the UTH29 activator in your palm. And then for every squirt, you do 2 drops of the ESS60 activator. So UTH29 lotion and ESS60 activator. You activate it right in your hand and apply it to everything that might show aging. And yeah, that's the one that we're going to do a study on. That is a little bit farther down the page, you can get the inside out set. And I have one last thing that I want to talk about. I'm so proud of it. My book, Live Longer and Better, is available on Amazon, $19.99. It's available on this landing page, same price. For 10 extra dollars, I will autograph that book for you. 100% of that $10 goes to Operation Underground Railroad. You may remember a movie called The Sound of Freedom, right? An amazing movie about a
Yes.
horrible topic, which is child exploitation. Operation Underground, that's the movie, is about Operation Underground Railroad, and they're doing a great job of getting that off of our planet. So 100% of that signature fee goes to Operation Underground Railroad.
That is awesome, Chris. Thank you.
Cool. And
Seriously.
that's my presentation. Thank you for bringing me on. Thank you for exposing this molecule to your audience. And if you've got any questions, I'm still here.
I don't think I have any questions. I'm excited about all of this. I did grab a sample from you at IHS and I did take it and I swear I did feel different on it. I felt better. I felt clearer throughout the day. Those were really long days and late nights. And I swear I felt a difference. I am definitely going to take advantage here of some of these links that you have, and I'm going to give it a good 3-month try and see how it goes. I'm one of those
Excellent.
people where even though I don't really have any issues, it's like I think we could all feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. We could all be a little bit better for sure.
Yeah.
And
And
if
I'd
you're doing
love
the
to,
right
I want to prevent. I don't want to have to try to treat. I want to prevent everything
and
in
if
my life.
if we're doing the right things, we should be stressing our body. The reality of stress is right. Like you should have tough workouts, right? You should maybe do a little intermittent fasting here. Again, your audience probably has enough kind of physiological stress
Yeah.
as it is, so don't push yourself. But yeah, it's good to have something that can really sop up those and hold on to, right? Because remember, we're not replacing glutathione, we're not replacing the body's natural processes. We're just giving it some buffer so that it can do its job normally.
Right. You know what? I think a good ending note might be I mean, obviously, this isn't the only thing, but I think it's a key piece to the puzzle. What are your, like, let's say, top 3 favorite things to use conjunctively with this?
Yeah, well, so I'll share things that I'm on. One is eating an anti-inflammatory diet is just really important. Yeah, you can cheat every now and then. Again, with your audience probably having a lot of physiological challenges, don't even cheat. Like stick hard to that either AIP. I think Dr. Gundry is even a little bit more aggressive than the AIP autoimmune protocol.
Yeah.
So stick with that. I think that's really valuable. I take creatine every day. I take vitamin D, A, K, and E, like the basics, and then of course my product on a regular basis, and exercise, right? And if it's again, if you don't need to be, you may not need to be in a position or be in a good position to over stress, but put some stress. If it's a walk and it may be a little bit longer or a little bit faster, like you need to have
Yeah.
motion. That blood flow adds value, allows your body to do. We were designed to move. We weren't designed to do what most of us do these days. Like as enjoyable as this has been, right, to be on this podcast with you, we aren't helping our health other than by getting good information in our head.
Movement is so important. And our listeners, we talk about this. We talk about a lot of lifestyle things. So, circulating the lymph and the blood
Yeah.
and, just oiling the joints. All of those things are so, so important. So thank you.
Oiling the joints, that reminds me, my dentist, the way he described taking this product, right? Because he's bent over patients all day, whatever. He goes, I feel like the Tin Man after he's been oiled, right? Because of our product. So it's funny that you mentioned that.
Yeah, no, and a lot of our listeners are dealing with significant chronic pain, stiffness, etc. So, anyway, I would challenge all of you listening to try it. Try it and give it a 90-day try and see if you feel better because it's not just a band-aid. It's not something that's just managing. It's actually getting to the heart of the issue and helping your body to repair on a cellular level, which is literally what we've been talking about for a lot of the summit. So, thank you, Chris, for being here with us. Thank you for sharing all of this with us. And to the listeners at home, if this was helpful, please share it with someone that you think it can help as well, because together we all heal stronger. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
If this episode gave you an answer, brought you new insight, or made you think differently, subscribe to the Lyme Bites podcast and share with someone who's ready to take control of their healing journey. And if you can, please leave a review. It helps others to find the show. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.